I am subbing for Audra today. Let's see, are we all good here? Hi guys, it's Anna. Welcome to Pilates. We're going to do this class without any props necessary. If you would like to throw in some props, we'll use a squishy ball today. Don't worry if you don't have it. You could also do a yoga block or a half foam roller if you wanted to kind of play with some of the stuff with the ball if you don't have a ball. And then light weights, which I always offer, don't always show. So if you want to add like toning balls, wrist weights, or something a little bit lighter, it can be a really nice way to get some shoulder stabilization in and a little more ab work into your regular mat class. So it can be a fun variation to try. Don't feel like you have to do all of the variations offered. If you prefer a modification that I don't cue and it's preferable to you, then please feel free to jump into that instead. And I think with that, hello. Yes, no worries. We'll get started. All right. So let's get started with a little standing warm up. So we'll just start, we'll kind of keep the standing part pretty brief today, but we'll just start with a little twisting. So just like nice wide legs, just letting everything move. Ankles, knees, hips, ribs, shoulders. Take this moment to kind of see how everything's moving, how you're breathing. One more each way. And then we'll come to center, bring your feet in a little bit. Let's do a couple of wrist rolls. And so as we're standing in the stack, just kind of noticing if we're a little bit maybe like ribs, back, hips forward, we can start to bring the ribs on top of the hips. Then we'll reverse these circles. So not only will our breath be better and access to breath better if we're stacked, but our abs will actually automatically work if we're stacked too. So there's a lot of good motivation. Our feet typically won't grip if our hips are stacked on top of our feet here. And then let's take this into some shoulder rolls. Nice easy rolls up and back. Right, our arms start from our shoulder blades. So if we can start to kind of awaken these nice butterfly bones. Try one more this way. And then reverse it. So now we're gonna go down, up and back. So we're kind of going through retraction and protraction of our shoulder blades. Getting familiar with how that feels in our body. And then on this next one, we'll take a roll forward. So we'll roll all the way down. So I'm gonna nod my chin, let the crown of my head turn towards the ground. You can have arms on the body for stability or just dangling. Go as low as feels comfortable. Relax the back of your neck and then push through your feet, scoop your abs, then roll it all the way back up. Nice, let's do that 2 more times. So nodding the chin, seeing as you roll down, if you can keep the weight even through the whole surface area of the foot. Right, if I have to bend my legs, that's totally fine. See if you can push through the soles of your feet. Find your glutes and hamstrings and core to roll it back up. Nice, one more like this. Rolling all the way down. And then pushing through the feet, scooping through the abs. We're just gonna open up the hips here for some side glute work. So I'm gonna step one leg back. If I need to use a wall or a foam roller or anything for support, I can. I've got my front leg back, my knees stacked over my heel, and then my back toes and hip are facing forward. So I'm going for a nice little calf stretch here. If I'm a little ribs back, see if you can bring the ribs forward so you're slightly on the diagonal. In this stance, we're gonna sweep the same arm as our back leg. We're gonna reach up. Think of more of a side stretch versus a side bend. Hello, yeah, come on in, no worries. And then you can reach the arm down. Let's do that 2 more times. So I'm thinking more of a side reach. So I'm trying to stretch the space between my rib and my arm, or rather my hip and my armpit. And last one like this, getting a little bit of stability through that front glute and quad. You're gonna challenge the balance just a little bit more here. We're gonna sweep that arm forward and twist towards that front leg. If you need more support, you can always bring that front arm towards your thigh, maybe looking all the way back towards your thumb. And then drop that arm. We'll switch the legs out here. So I'm gonna bring my opposite leg back. Knee stacked over my heel here. And then you wanna make sure your back toes and hips are facing forward. So if I need a little support, right, I can always move towards the wall. We're gonna sweep the same arm as our back leg up. And I'm thinking of reaching up more so than side bending. So I'm getting, yeah, nice, a big stretch between my hip and my armpit. You can drop that arm. We'll do that 2 more times. Just finding some nice length. The more I push through that back heel, the bigger stretch I'm going to get through my calf. Front of that hip gets a little length. Let's do 1 more like this. Already having to stabilize through my front glute, right? You can feel it's a little bit of balance here. And then we're going to add a twist. So I'm going to sweep my back arm forward. If I need more support, I can place it on that thigh. Maybe challenging the balance a little more by looking back for a breath. And then you can drop those arms. Nice. We'll come to one end of our mat, so back of the mat here, if you're not sideways like I am. And we're just going to roll all the way down to hands and knees. So starting with that initial roll down, letting the crown of the head fall towards the toes. You can bend the legs if you need to get a kneeling pad here, fold your mat. Bringing those hands underneath your shoulders. Just watch if they're a little internally rotated. See if you can actively rotate the arm bones externally. We're gonna take 3 rounds of cat-cow. So I'm gonna push away, scooping the abs, rounding the spine, easy breath in, extending the chest forward without letting the body kind of sink through the arms. So I'm still pushing away. Definitely some triceps. I should feel some support coming from underneath my armpits and a little bit of retraction and protraction through my shoulder blades. My hips are helping me here too, so my core is initiating this movement. Should feel like I have a little stabilization through my outer hips, kind of like if I was doing a clamshell. When you finish your last one, come to neutral. We're gonna take a little side bend. So I'm gonna side bend towards the left, looking towards my left hip, lengthening the spine. Can you keep the elbows lengthened as you switch sides? And we'll try 2 more sets like this. So I'm moving in my flat back position, trying to get a little bit of a side bend. Some hip movement here, last round. I'm just mobilizing, lengthening one side of the torso. When you finish this last one, we'll do our rotation. So I'm gonna take 3 each way. I'm gonna sweep my left arm up and back. Pretty tricky here. We might not feel like we make a really pure rotation. Don't worry too much about it. And then switch sides. We're just going for a big circle with the arm. See if you can look towards that hand. Let the weight shift back a little more onto the hips if it feels like a lot of weight to support in that arm. Love an exhale for this one. As long as you feel like you can breathe through this motion and not holding the breath, you can, welcome to take an inhale too. Last one over here. Nice, we'll come off the wrist here, we'll cross the ankles. And then let's grab our ball. So if you wanted to use your weights, this would be your moment that you always have the option to make this harder. It's a lot of ab work. So if you have a ball, you can pop it in between your thighs. If you don't have a ball, just bring those legs together. So I'm gonna try to sit up as high as I can. I might need to adjust my feet further or closer. If I have my weights, I'm gonna hold them. We're just gonna do a little roll back. So here's my half roll back, rolling my pelvis away from my thighs. Take a nice breath in, curling forward to come back up. All right, so this is just like my regular half roll back. And you can stick with your weights if you would like. I'm just gonna show kind of all the versions. So it's my pelvis rolling back. As I exhale, I'm squeezing my ball. I'm crunching from my ribs to come forward. I'm gonna take my arms with me. So if you've got those weights, my arm bones are moving with me versus staying still in space. We get a little bit more of a rounded kind of look when we forget our arms. And exhale to curl forward. We should start to feel some core here. Yeah. Try 2 more, good. And exhale to roll up. Nice, 1 more here. And then on this next one, we're gonna roll back and stay. So I'm gonna exhale, roll maybe not as low as I would typically do, but get a little curl through your low back. I'm gonna sweep just my right arm out to the side, keeping my gaze forward, come back to center, and just my left. Yep, and some great ways to make this a little more supportive. Curl up a little higher in the ribs, right? Keep your range of motion a little smaller. If you wanna make it harder, you can go a little lower, really reach those arms out. Let the shoulder blade move without the rib cage popping. We're gonna do 1 more each way. Squeezing that ball, that's gonna help keep the pelvis from shifting. And the last one, you can roll all the way down. Pull those heels close to the bum. You'll kind of feel like you can just touch the heels, or at least as close as you can. Gonna get a little bit more glute here for our shoulder bridge. Arms can be down for a little more excitement if you wanna reach your arms to the ceiling, or if you've got your weights, you can do that too. I'm gonna scoop and lift my hips. Peeling my spine off the mat, take a nice breath in at the top, and then exhale to lengthen and lower the spine back down. So this is the exact same motion that I just did in my cat-cow and my half roll back. So my core is initiating the lift, and then I'm melting my rib cage. I'm keeping my core scooping as I lower back down. So instead of kind of a smash to lift, your glutes and hamstrings will turn on once your pelvis is up. So you can kind of watch as the weight shifts into the heels and the upper back, that the bum does turn on. But see if you can initiate this with your abs in both directions. We'll hold up on this next one. With arms to the ceiling, I'm gonna reach just my right arm out to a hover, bring that arm back up, and exhale, left arm out to the side, bringing that arm back up. So we're alternating sides here. We're not gonna actually let the arm rest on the ground. We're still moving the shoulder blades. This is this challenge between our rib cage and our scapula. Can I keep the mobility of my shoulder blades without letting my rib cage pop? And can you keep that curl in your low core? So protecting that low back, glutes and hammies, little inner thigh here. Try one more to the right, one more to the left, and then roll it all the way back down. So with your neutral position here, let's flip the palms so they're gonna be face down. If you've got the weights, you can keep the weights above your chest. If you don't have weights, you can sweep your arms overhead. We're gonna take a nice breath in as we reach the arms to the ceiling, nod the chin, and exhale to curl up. And then lengthening and lowering back down. Yeah, and you can do long fingers. If you don't have weights, feel free to keep that kind of hundreds, classic hundreds arm. And so as you're taking your crunches here, your ab prep, notice that you're nodding your chin before you lift your head and shoulders. That's gonna take some of that neck tension out, finding that nice coordination. And remember that your crunch is from your rib cage. So if the neck likes to overwork, think of your sternum rotating towards your thighs and this kind of triangle reaching down towards your pubic bone from your floating ribs. My pelvis is steady in space and neutral. We're gonna try two more like this. Nice, on this next one, we're gonna stay. So you're exhaling to curl up. Take a breath in here. Exhale, reach your arms above your knees. Exhale, lower your arms to your hips. Exhale, reach your arms above the knees. I cued that word with breath. Inhale, lower your arms by your hips. Exhale to lift the arms. Inhale to lower. Exhale to lift. Inhale to lower. Can you curl up just a little higher for 3 more? Exhale to lift. Inhale to lower. And 2. And inhaling to lower. Last one. Exhale to lift right from your ribs. And lower. And then you can lower all the way back down. Reach your arms out to the side here. Nice little T. So your prep variation is toes on the ground for your spine twist. If you are ready, come into an imprint here. So drawing your ribs towards your hips. You're gonna drag those toes towards your bum and float your legs to tabletop. Got my arms out in a T here, palms down or up. We're gonna let the right hip lift as the legs go to the left, little twist. Squeeze that ball, draw the core in, come back to center on an inhale. So letting those legs, or on an exhale, letting those legs fall over to the side, exhaling to draw the legs back up. So as we go from side to side, whether the legs are in tabletop or the toes are still touching the ground, we're only gonna go as far, obviously, as our other shoulder doesn't lift, but see if you can keep it out of the low back. So the bottom inner thigh, your top outer hip, core is drawing in. You've got that nice sinking feeling through those floating ribs. We're gonna try one more each way. Last one. And then let yourself roll all the way onto one side. So whichever side you can see here. We'll ditch the props for a moment. We're gonna come into a little clamshell. So whatever feels best in your head, you wanna grab a prop, you can bend the arm, lengthen the arm. Give yourself a little pelvis check. So take a little tuck and untuck, kind of noticing where that alignment is. We're looking for neutral. If this hip likes to fall in, lift your bottom obliques up. We're gonna take that top leg and come into external rotation. So if I have my hand kind of right where my swimsuit line, underwear line would be, this is the muscle that's gonna be pressing. So it's almost like my thigh plugs in, kind of like a suction feeling, and then I press out with that outer hip. Yeah. And just making sure that the neck doesn't have unnecessary tension. Sometimes you might find that when you switch sides, you have an asymmetry where your head needs different padding from side to side. Nice, one more like this. We're gonna reverse it. So float your leg to hip height. Keep that thigh still in terms of height, and then rotate the leg in. So now internal rotation, knee down, foot up. As you do that, can you keep that supporting side of the rib and core from kind of falling open? You can always do hand on hip, but they kind of play together. So my hip will lengthen the more I lift out of the bottom side of my abs. Yeah, try one more like this. Hopefully we're still breathing. Lengthen that leg out. Give your leg a little moment here. So for more support, you can keep the bottom leg bent. For a little more challenge, flex that leg, activate through your quad, and reach that bottom leg long. You're gonna float the top leg up to hip height. We're gonna turn the leg in and tap the toes forward, make a little rainbow up and back, and tap your heel back. So if you've got that foot kind of nicely placed in the middle of the mat, you can use that as a pretty good guide. But you want that bottom supporting leg to be the center of your rainbows here. And again, the foot can get a little bit overly illustrative, but make sure the rotation's really coming from the hip. It's okay if you can't tap all the way down. If you start to rock the hips open, just indicate that tap. If you feel some bum, it's not our hip. Try one more each way. Nice, and then you can roll onto your front here. Before we switch sides, we'll just do a little extension. So don't feel limited by your mat. You can have your hands about shoulder rib height, but don't feel like you have to have them too narrow. You're gonna press the tops of the feet down to get your glutes and hamstrings on. I'm gonna lift my shoulder blades. So I'm plugging them onto my back here and extend the sternum forward, let the head undulate, and then lengthen back down. So ribs lift first, and then my neck and head follows. And I'm just kind of gazing towards the top of my mat here. If I want to make this more work, I can let go of the arms at the top and keep them lifted as I lower back down. Now my core and my bum and hammies are on to support me. You might find the more you kind of cue into those, the higher you get as well. I'm really not lifting super high, so my floating ribs are still connected to the floor. Try about 2 more like this. And last one. And then you can take your hands by your side, use your abs and your arms, press back here. Take a child's pose. Keep this one pretty active. So see if you can push with your arms to really hollow out your core. There's a little fire in between your mat and your belly button. See if you can scoop your abs back with a little extra pressure through the arms. And then carefully walk your hands back here. One more thing before we go back to the other side. Just come onto hands and knees. We're gonna take a little bird dog. So if I wanna keep my opposite fingers and toes on the ground, that's a great way to start. As I'm feeling more stable, I can start to extend my opposite limbs. You can break it down even more, where maybe you're just gonna do arms or just legs if you need more support. What we're more interested in is what's happening in the supporting team. So if there's any collapse before you let go, can you focus a little more on the pressure out of your supporting arm and that supporting hip pushing in? And then my abs are definitely lifting up here. Yeah. Nice, you guys. Easy breath here. We'll take about one more each side. And then you can cross your ankles and slide onto your other side that you haven't done yet for your side leg series. So we're gonna come back to that clamshell. Kind of check in with the neck on this side. You might find you need a different setup. Take those pelvic rocks. So a little pelvic tuck and extension. Just kind of noticing, all right, what is neutral, tailbone and crown reaching in opposition from each other. Bottom oblique is lifted. When you're ready, you're gonna exhale, float that knee up. And again, maybe hand on outside, kind of where the swimsuit line would be, maybe hand on hip if you notice that that hip likes to drop in. There's kind of a plugging of the thigh bone and then a pressing with the external rotators versus using a lot of the front of our hip to get this motion. Bottom obliques are lifted. Easy breath here, just kind of noticing if there's anything that's on that doesn't need to be on. It's really easy to tense in our neck, usually if our core isn't working as much as it should, or maybe if our head position isn't quite supported enough. Okay, one more here. You're gonna float that leg to hip height. We're gonna turn the leg in. So keeping that leg at hip height, rotating the knee down, the foot up. And if the bottom side of the obliques or the ribs wanna sink, that hip might start to fall in. And take your time on these rotations. If there's one that feels a little more natural, that one might be easy to do kind of in a rhythm. But if you need to go a little slower, if you find, oh, internal rotation on the side is a little bit weird, I'm not totally sure how to find it, feel free to take a little more time to find that rotation, right? So it's my thigh actually spinning in my hip socket. Take a little rest for a moment here. So more supported is bottom leg bent. If you want a little more challenge, straighten the bottom leg, flex the foot, and get your inner quad on. We're gonna float the top leg up to hip height. I'm gonna turn my leg in, tap my toe down in front of my supporting foot, rainbow the foot up and over, and tap the heel down. So I'm going now into that internal rotation, right? Not just my foot, but my whole thigh is spinning. And if I can't quite tap in either direction without letting my hips open up to the ceiling or my ribs fall to the ground, so we're looking for a nice stack here of right shoulders, ribs, and hips staying steady as my leg rotates. So torso is my space hold, and my thighs moving independently. Finding some length will help support. Try one more each way. Nice, then you can take a little rest here. Roll onto your front again for a little more extension. For this one, we're gonna do kind of like our bird dog, but on our bellies. So my arms can be wide in front of me, palms facing down, and my head's just kind of hovering, so maybe like nose on the ground or head just above the ground. You got a mask to negotiate with. I'm gonna press through the tops of my feet, gets my glutes and hamstrings on, my core is on, and I'm kind of pressing down through my hands a bit. I'm gonna keep that pressure as I float my right arm and left leg up. And then I'm gonna lower those limbs, keep the pressure through right and left as I lift my left and right. So essentially here, my supporting limbs are still really important. Now, as I kind of get comfortable with this motion, I can start to let my torso come into extension. So my chest can rise, keeping my gaze forward as I switch sides. Again, you could isolate this to one limb at a time. We want to make sure it's not just the neck lifting, but it's the upper back coming into extension. I love an inhale for this one. A lot of your height will be determined by how strong your supporting system is pressing down. And we'll try one more each way. Good, keeping those knees nice and straight, good. Then you can bring your hands by your sides again here, take a little press back. For this child's pose, if you want to add a side bend, so knees together or knees wide, whatever feels better, you're going to bring your hands over to the right, push your hips to the left, maybe dropping the head to the ground. If the head doesn't quite reach, you can always take that right hand and rest your forehead on your palm or make a fist. And then sweeping those arms over to the other side here. And pushing the hips in opposition again. If the head doesn't quite make it down, maybe taking that left palm, resting the head, getting a nice stretch through the side body here. Scooping the abs away from the thighs. And then coming back to center, you can roll and support yourself all the way up. We're gonna add our bird dog to our cat-cow. So for this one, we'll come back into our quadruped position. I'm gonna sweep my opposite arm and leg. Now, if I want more support, both hands down for this whole version. And then I'm gonna round, try to connect my knee, my elbow, and my nose, and then extend back out. So tons of work through the supporting side. Replace and try the other side. So just one each round before we alternate. Now I have to push out of my supporting limbs and scoop my belly to create more space to bring that leg in. So if I'm kind of sinking in my supporting limbs, I have a lot less space. If I push out of my supporting limbs, so there's that hip you just worked a ton in your side leg series, that creates more support and more space for that opposite leg to move underneath. Here's that same low core piece. So I'm really lifting my abs. That's that initial movement in my half roll back. Super deep hip flexor. Try one more each way. And I'm kind of emphasizing that flexion moment, but still a lot of work in the extension too. When you finish both sides, you can roll onto your bum. Grab your ball if you've got it. If you want to add your weights, we're going to do our full roll up. Weights can actually be really nice for the full roll up if you're working on it. So my first version is bent legs. I'm just going to show this one quickly. Ball in between my knees. I can use my hands here to roll down. And I can sweep my arms overhead. And then here I can use the momentum, and I can use my hands and my arms to help pull me up. So that can be a nice version. If you know this one pretty well, then you're ready for your full roll up. Same thing, legs extended. So now I'm just gonna do my full roll up. Here's my initial pelvis motion, arms sweeping overhead, arms reach to the ceiling, nod my chin and my curl all the way up. All right, so those are kind of two versions. If you're also working on your full roll up, the weights can be nice because I can take them down with me, and then I can use the load to help pull me forward a little bit, which is nice. So either weights forward, take about 6 of these as I yak. Just keep going. You can also use the backs of your legs, right? So those are kind of, if I've got a band or a strap, that can be a nice version. But by pressing with the backs of my legs and pulling with my hands, that can give me a little more assistance on the way up. And if you're really good at your full roll up, with your weights to make it a little harder, keep the arms extended. And then when you come up, you can actually reach the weights to the ceiling. So that can be a nice way to make it a little bit harder for my roll up people. Yeah, nice, exactly. It's so much more work to keep the arms up. So we'll roll down on this next one and we'll just stay down here. So if you want to add a little more excitement into this exercise, you can put the ball under your hips. If you don't have a ball, you don't have to worry about it. If you don't like the ball, you also don't have to worry about it. I'm going to show the ball version. So with the ball under my hips, I just want to make sure it's not under my low back. So I'm going to be biased a little bit more to an imprint position. So it's already a little unstable. So maybe I start with my arms on the ground and I float one leg up to tabletop, and then I lower that leg back down. And then I try the other side. So if your spine is arching as you lower that leg, then we might want to adjust the ball a little bit more under your bum and less under your low back. So this is a good place to check. If this is already pretty wild, stay here. If you're ready for kind of upping the level, float one leg to tabletop, float the second leg to meet it. Check in with the spine again, so we're more in an imprint position. Hands down to start. You can take a little tap. Now maybe you don't quite touch the floor. It's pretty extended. If your back arches and your ribs pop, we're not going to take it quite into that range of motion. If it feels okay, and this might depend on the size of your ball, right? The volume of the prop you're using. If you have a big foam roller, it's going to be a lot more work than if you have a half foam roller. So thinking about those things here. If you want to make it more exciting, reach your arms to the ceiling. And so arms to the ceiling, right? And kind of bridging the gap, I guess I should mention elbows. So elbows bent is a good kind of in between. You've got a little bit more surface area, but it's definitely more wiggly. And if you want to make this harder, just start to tap those feet a little further away. Don't forget about your supporting leg. So our pelvis is connected. So if the working leg is kind of where our brain is and we're forgetting about that supporting leg, it can really be pulling us off kilter. And we'll try a couple more like this. Nice, breathing here, letting that thigh reach away from center. So that's our core challenge. As long as we can maintain our spinal position. You get one more each way. And then you can carefully lower one leg down, lower that second leg down, take a little bridge here for a moment. Take that ball out from under. Walk the feet a little wider than your hips and just let the knees fall from side to side. Little windshield wiper here. So again, an option to add the ball, but you don't have to. We're gonna go into a little shoulder bridge lift, a little hover. So the ball definitely makes it more unstable. A little more hamstring here. So I'm gonna put both of my feet on the ball if I've got it. And then before you go anywhere, I just want you to press your feet into the ball. And so if your feet are on the ground, you're just pressing your feet into the ground. You should feel your glutes and hamstrings turn on just by pressing the feet down. So once you find that activation, hover your bum about 2 inches off the ground. So it's just a little hover. We're not going into a full shoulder bridge. And then lower the hips down. And try that a couple more times. So find the work first, pressing before you lift, and then floating up. So your glutes and hammies are definitely the star here. And then lower down. Easy breath in, find that pressure, exhale to lift. And then lowering back down. Try one more like this. So just finding that activation. Nice, so on this next one, we're gonna stay in a hover, right? You can ditch the ball if it feels a little bit like too much right now. We're gonna float the bum up, keeping the bum just a couple inches off the ground. We're gonna butterfly the knees out and then bring the knees back in. Now, if you wanna make this harder, right, maybe elbows or maybe reaching the arms to the ceiling. It's significantly more oblique work. So if we notice that we're really using our shoulders a lot to stabilize, instead of maybe abs, right, when we release the arms, it's gonna give us a lot of info. And just breathing smoothly here. You're gonna try to keep equal range of motion on both sides of the hips. Get some good outer hip work. Find the glutes that you found earlier. We're gonna do one more like this and we're gonna stay. So your bum's still hovering, hopefully getting a little bit more fiery. Keep your right thigh steady, open just your left thigh and bring the left thigh back in. You get to do 5 of those. Don't forget about your supporting bum. So that supporting bum's definitely working for you. If you need to bring the arms back down, or you can, check in with the ribs. Did we start to pop? Pause here, stabilize through your left bum. Right leg's gonna butterfly out and in. Right, more support is arms down. You get 3 more here. For 2. Last one. And then set that bum down. Do we feel some hamstrings? Lengthen your legs out. From hamstrings? We'll give you a little reprieve here. So you can lengthen your right leg down, clasp your hands behind your left thigh. We're gonna take a couple knee pumps. So this is a nice one. So you're keeping your thigh still in space, and you're just gonna kick that heel to the ceiling and bend. So it's active. Now, if you can pull your thigh as close to your chest as possible. Don't worry if the knee straightens or not. You're gonna get a bigger stretch this way. And just take a couple kicks. Some knee pumps here. Nice for the whole back line, that whole sciatica line. On the next one, you can point and flex your toes. Maybe take some ankle circles. Get a little movement there. And then bend that leg. So we'll take a spine twist. I've still got my leg in my hands. I'm gonna let it cross my body and then sweep that arm in opposition out to the side. If this doesn't feel comfortable in the SI, just bend that bottom leg in so that you've got a nice stack. And that can be a nice variation if the SI doesn't love the long leg version. And just take a couple breaths here. Kind of think about if there was an inner tube you were filling with air between your hips and your ribs. Can you fill that inner tube? And as you exhale, ungrip. And then you can sweep that arm back to that thigh. Come onto your back, take a couple knee circles with the same leg. We'll gently release that leg back down, and we'll pass our hands to our opposite thigh here, clasping behind the knee, and take some knee pumps on this side. Some easy breaths here. Right, a flex is gonna give you a little bit more in terms of that sciatica stretch. If you wanna pull the thigh even closer to the torso, don't worry if the knee actually straightens or not. You might find out you have a little bit of a difference from side to side in terms of where the tightness is, if it's more behind the knee, more the calf, more at the top of the hamstring and the glute. On this next one, you can pause, take a couple points and flexes, maybe some circles. And then you can bend that leg in, let it cross over your body. Right, you've got that option if this is a little too much in the low back to just stack both legs. You'll sweep that top arm out and around. And just finding the breath on this side. Maybe closing the eyes and kind of noticing just how the sides feel, if there's any similarities, any differences. Anything that's kind of been like a shadow in terms of you knew that spot was a little sore and you want to address it later. And you'll take that arm back, grabbing that thigh, take a couple circles. And then you can gently lengthen that leg all the way down. Give your legs just a couple of flops in and out. We're gonna bend the legs in here. We'll come into a little bit more ab work. So for this one, we're gonna sweep the arms back behind our head, clasping those fingers. So we're gonna come into our imprint position. So ribs and hips are drawing together with those obliques. I'm gonna take a breath in. As I exhale, I'm gonna curl up and I'm gonna float one leg to tabletop. And then I'm gonna lengthen and lower back down. And I'm gonna alternate sides here. So exhaling to lift, supporting that lift. Now at any point, if you need to rest the head, right and shoulders, you could still do this work. Toe lifts, leg lifts rather, are still qualify as core work, even if our head isn't coming up each time. Let your mid-back really support. So if you watch the weight shift, as I nod my chin, it kind of shifts into my middle back, and then it lengthens back down as I lower. Nice. We'll do one more each way. And last one. Nice, so now we'll stick with the same leg. So we'll say our left leg is our lifter here. We're gonna curl up, lift that leg. When we lower our head down, we're gonna kick that leg out. And then I'm gonna curl and lift. Now if I wanna make this harder, I can lower that leg, right? So the lower this left leg goes when I rest, the more I'm asking my core to work. Exhaling to lift. More support, I can lengthen it a little higher. Try two more like this. Exhaling to curl, keeping that imprint when that leg reaches long, check in with the supporting leg. Next time your leg is long and your head is down, you're gonna reach the leg straight towards the ceiling. Exhaling, right, it's okay if the knee bends, you're just gonna think your extension, lowering the head as the leg lowers. Exhale to lift. How's the neck? So as you get tired, do you feel like you're just tugging on the head? Or is the lift really coming from the ribs here? Got a little action through my supporting leg, keeping that inner thigh and outer hip engaged. Nice, you get two more. Last one. And then you can bend that leg in, lower it down. Okay, before we go to the other side, we're gonna do a fun little intermission. So you can keep your head down for this one, come into your imprint. We're gonna float both legs up to tabletop. We're gonna do a little kick out. So bring your feet into your frog position, heels together, toes apart. You're gonna exhale to extend the legs out. If you wanna point the toes, you can. and then pull the feet back in. We're gonna take 6 of these. So exhale, squeeze your inner thighs and your glutes. Head's just relaxing here. It's actually pretty challenging to keep the arms behind the head, so if you need to lower the arms by the hips. We've got 3 more. Exhale, squeezing the glutes, inner thighs. For 2. Right, the lower you go, the harder. Last one. And then you can carefully lower those legs back down, right? That was our intermission, our ab intermission from abs. So we're gonna clasp your hands the other way, just so you get a little variation here from habits. Still in my imprint. This time I'm gonna exhale to curl up. My right leg comes up. As I lower my head and shoulders, my right leg reaches out on the diagonal. And then I curl. Nice, now the lower I go, the more work it's gonna be in deep hip and deep core. Yeah, nice. 3 more like this. Can you keep your weight evenly distributed between both sides of your pelvis? Right, I'm still getting good work even if my head is down. As you get tired, can you keep those ribs really the source of the ab prep? 1 more like this. Next time you curl up, that right leg's gonna reach towards the ceiling. Yeah, now this can be a really small movement, right? I could be matching my supporting thigh and coming up, or I could going all the way down to a hover. Yeah, supporting that neck for 3. Keeping both sides nice and long, so we're looking for any side bending. 2. You get 1 more. Nice, then bend that leg in. You can lower it down. Ab intermission. So we're gonna take that same turned out position that we had. If you wanna do hands behind the head, it's always gonna make it a little harder. We're gonna float the legs up again to tabletop. I'm still in my imprint. I'm in my turned out position. This time I'm gonna take beats. So I'm gonna be out on the diagonal, just crisscrossing those inner thighs. See if you can keep your turned out position so your heels and your inner thighs are crossing. Now I'm gonna just take a couple more rounds of breath here. You can go lower if you want. We're just doing a nice brutal isometric hold. Keeping that imprint. You get 4. And 3. Still breathing for 2. And last one. And then you can bend those legs in, squeeze your legs, give yourself a little hug here, take some circles in your sacrum. Do you feel some core there? Excellent. That was the goal. Nice, you can grab the backs of your thighs here, take a couple rock and rolls. Let's go for like 5 to 6. If you wanna play with your teaser balance, you are more than welcome to. Kind of find your little ball float here and then come down, right? Here's our half roll back. So it's the same thing. If you wanna make it harder, right? If you've done your rock and rolls a million times and you wanna go no hands, that can be a fun variation. So it's like the more I can isolate this moment of that pelvic roll, the more controlled these guys are gonna be. And we'll call that about 6. Nice. All right, so take your legs, I'm just gonna show from the front. Take your legs a little wider, and we're just gonna do a little internal, external rotation. If you want more support, you can have your hands behind you. And if you wanna have to kind of work it a little more, you can keep your arms up. So if my feet are really close, it's pretty tricky, but if I have my feet a little wider, I can pivot. And my hips will turn with me. I'm coming into external and internal rotation. And you might notice like, ooh, that one thigh is not quite fully in the hip socket if it feels like one direction is a little trickier than the other. When we have our left leg forward, let's pause with that left leg forward. So we can come into mermaid legs. If this does not feel good, just lengthen that right leg long and turn it out. So this is also a mermaid leg, which is nice to know. We're still mermaids. And then you're gonna take that arm, sweep towards the left knee, nice big side bend. And then come back up. You can either grab the shin, or if your leg is long, you can grab the ankle, shin, and side bend the other direction. So we're just taking some big sweeps, side to side. This is for a big stretch. Move through this, don't analyze it too deeply. As long as you're breathing fluidly. We'll take 1 more this side. So we're just looking for a nice stretch, keeping the ribs easy. And then if you've got your legs in your mermaid position, you're just gonna flip them to the other side, right? And I have that option. Keep in mind, you might find one side is more flexible in a certain way, so maybe you wanna opt for that version 2. You're gonna side bend towards that front knee. Yep, and then side bending away. Yeah, nice and fluid. So the more you reach through that top arm, kind of like a nice little dancey, show that version 2. We'll take 2 more sets like this, keeping the ribs easy, nodding the chin if the neck likes to tense. Nice, you can sweep your legs forward here. We're gonna come into a little reverse table. So 2 options for reverse table. You can either, and with your hands, remember if your fingers are gonna be here, we just wanna watch the shoulder head. So typically kind of fingers out or back is gonna be a little more supportive. You can either take your reverse table here, which is with bent legs, or if I wanna do my reverse table with long legs, I'm gonna come into my turnout that we practiced. So I'm gonna squeeze my inner thighs together, my heels are squeezing, thumb is on, and I'm gonna lift up here. So you've got 2 options. We're just gonna lift up in an exhale, take a nice breath in at the top, pushing out of the arms, and then we're gonna roll back down. Yep, and if arms don't love this one, take it into a shoulder bridge. And you can go up, take a nice breath in, maybe even reach the arms overhead, and then roll it down. And that can be a nice way to kind of help stretch out that armpit. So we'll do that about 5 times. Looks like most of us chose the bent version. So the more I can press out of my arms as I lower down, the more strength I'm gonna build. Yeah, nice. The more I press through my heels, right, keeping that gaze forward, it's really tempting to drop the head back. It's actually a lot worse for the neck, but also harder to keep the shoulder blades in a good position. So kind of thinking of reaching towards that top corner. We'll try 1 more here. Yeah, nice. I know reverse table is awkward and hard, but it's so good for us. Let's take a little teaser to counter that. So hands behind the thighs are a good prep. You're gonna roll back just off your sits bones. Maybe you're gonna start with just floating a leg up and just kind of finding that you can keep this C curve in your spine and maybe trying the other side. Once this feels good, right, so maybe this is the version we're at today, then I could float both legs up. The biggest piece is we wanna watch out for popping the low back straight. So I just wanna make sure, yeah, that we've got this nice curve. Maybe we can let go. That would be like the next version. Yeah, and I should feel like you have to breathe through this, so it's not just like a position that I can stay frozen in, but I'm kind of actively adjusting it. And then maybe for the last couple breaths, maybe the arms reach out a little bit. That can make it a little more exciting, or maybe the legs lift a little bit. We'll just hold for about 3 more breaths. So play with one variation where it's a little harder, kind of on the edge of your stamina here. And then you can carefully come forward. Nice. Butterfly your legs out. That was a lovely hold, you guys. 20 minutes later, you can grab your ankles. We're gonna do a little cat-cow. So I'm gonna let myself roll back off my sits bones. I'm gonna round your upper back here. You can kind of hang in your arms. And then I'm gonna roll forward, pull with my elbows, and extend my chest to where the wall and the ceiling meet. And we'll do that about 3 more times. So rounding back. And then extending forward. Yeah, and you can really move with the spine here. So some nice protraction, retraction with your flexion and extension. Last one like this. And then we'll take a couple little circles. So you're gonna combine kind of that same motion of moving back and forward, but we're gonna add a little circle to right or left. And I'll show this from the front too. And kind of commit to whatever direction you chose for about 4 rounds. And then you'll go the opposite direction. Kind of combining this, and you'll weight one side more than the other. Finding your breath, maybe it feels nice to close the eyes. You can really notice how the spine is moving, how the hips are moving. Take about 2 more this direction. I'm getting stuck. There's like one spot that's like, I will not mobilize. And when you finish your last one, you can lengthen the legs out and we'll roll all the way down. So we'll cross the right ankle over the left thigh here. And then reaching the arms out to a T, you can take a couple twists here in your figure 4. So I'm using that supporting leg, actively kind of pressing my top thigh back. And if one side of the twist feels really nice and you want to stay for an extra breath, if this isn't quite enough and you want a little more, draw the legs into tabletop. It's a little more work to support, but you'll get a deeper stretch, right? So whenever we actively mobilize, we keep what we've earned versus kind of just like flopping into the splits and taking a nap. Like we're not really going to get anything out of that. And then the next time you come into a twist, we've got our right leg on top. When we twist to the left, we're going to hold that twist. Now I can either bring my left hand to my right ankle and kind of support this here. If I want a deeper stretch, I can cross my right thigh all the way. So I'm kind of tucking it under and pinning it with my left leg. And then I can take a couple of breaths in this variation. So we've got 2 different twists. Maybe keeping the gaze to the ceiling, maybe turning the head gently. You can adjust that right arm position up or down for a little different stretch in the shoulder. And then gently rolling those legs back to center. Keep them crossed here. So my right leg's crossed as if I'm sitting cross-legged in a chair. And I'm going to draw the legs into my chest. Now I could grab under my knees behind my thighs or maybe shins, and then draw those knees towards my chest as I press my tailbone down. I'm getting a little active stretch here with knees and tailbone working in opposition. The more I'm in external rotation, the more of a stretch I should feel kind of through the low back, deep hip. And then just gently unwind those legs. Do something that just kind of feels nice and even. So maybe reaching the legs to the ceiling, maybe taking a little windshield wiper before you try the other side. Find your square position here, and then we'll cross that left leg over the right thigh. Arms can come out to a T again, and then we'll start with those little side bends. So if one side feels good, you want to hang out for an extra moment, maybe you take a couple breaths in this. Remember, you can always up this a bit by floating the legs to tabletop. So it's a little more active. Don't feel like you have to take the same version on both sides. If you need a little more support on one side, if you need to take it a little slower, one side needs more stretch. Just a little body scan, kind of how's everything holding while you're in this stretch? Is it like neck is gripping, so you can still keep a little bit of ab engagement? The next time that left leg falls over to the right, you can either take your right hand and hold that left ankle and just take a couple of breaths in this twist. If you want a little variation, cross that left leg all the way over and then pin the legs down. And you might find one side you prefer one of the variations. Maybe turning your head, maybe playing with the arm reach. Just kind of notice, don't judge, but just notice what are the differences, if there's anything that you kind of want to look at later, like, oh, I should do this stretch again later today. And then carefully drawing those legs back to center. We're going to keep the legs crossed. So my left leg is crossed all the way over my right. I'm either going to pull the legs in, holding underneath my thighs, under my knees, or maybe my shins or ankles. I'm going to pull those knees into my chest, checking in with the shoulders here. So we got some shoulder blade engagement. And then pressing the tailbone down. So pretty active. You can always kind of release that and then re-engage. And then uncrossing your legs again, maybe taking legs to the ceiling, legs long, doing something to kind of even yourself out here. And just think about how you want to exit. So if you want to be nice and supported, maybe you roll to the side and help yourself up. Maybe you want a little more energy, so you want to take another rock and roll to come up to seated. Just kind of plan before you throw your body around. And I'll leave you guys there.